Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Fake Nerds Watch for Star Trek Strange New Worlds Season 2. We're going to be talking about Episode 7, Those Old Scientists. I am here today with Sparkz Witty.
It gets grosser every time.
Ryan Iliopoulos.
Listen, if I'm here, someone's getting Spock. I'm just saying.
And forgot to introduce myself. I am Brandon C. McClure. We are talking about Episode 7, the long-awaited Lower Decks Star Trek Strange New Worlds crossover episode titled Those Old Scientists. This is directed by the one and only Will Riker himself, Jonathan Frakes.
That was really fun to see.
Yeah. Written by Catherine Lim and Bill Wolkoff. All right, so I love this episode, but I'm very curious to know what you guys felt.
I had a good time with this one. I thought that was a lot of fun. I'm a seasoned Lower Decks fan here. I love the characters of Baltimore and Maryland. Let me tell you, I know their names. I'm just joshing. No, I thought this was a lot of fun. I'll be honest. I think, and this is not a negative. It's just like I think I just wanted the episode to have a little more like really dumb comedy like the show, but I guess like that's not to expect from Strange New Worlds. It is a crossover, so like I had a really good time. A part of me kind of wishes it was a little more, and it was fun and silly, but like just a little more like, yo, we're really gonna go for it because we're doing a huge crossover. And like while again it was not a negative, I do wish that was there, but I had a good time.
Yeah, Sparkz.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a solid episode overall. Did it live up to the hype? Because you've talked about it nonstop since they announced it. So did it live up to your hype, Brandon?
It did. And in fact, it was, up until recently, my favorite episode of the season. And an episode trumped it. A later episode trumped it, which I was surprised about. But I thought for me, I always knew that they had to kind of bring Mariner and Boimler down a bit to Strange New Worlds level of humor. And I think they managed to do that while also keeping them true to who they were on the show. That said, though, I think Jack Quaid is a better live-action Mariner. Jesus. I think Jack Quaid is doing a better live-action Boimler than Tawny Newsome is doing a live-action Mariner. I think Jack Quaid clearly and he talked about it on the Ready Room afterwards, like he went back and watched the show to like get the mannerisms and the movements of Boimler just right, and I think it really shows because like for Jack Quaid, it is literally like he walked off of the set of Lower Decks. But for Tawny Newsome, it's not quite as seamless. She's still good and she's still clearly Mariner. So I think Jack Quaid did it better.
Sure. Again, even though I am a seasoned veteran of Lower Decks, that's a joke. Y'all have seen one episode. I cannot comment that whatsoever. I thought they were both really fun. Upon watching seasons of it, I'm sure I can see more of the character stuff. Mm-hmm. But I thought they were both really fun. I didn't think there was. I was worried that like. Not that I think they're both like they would be bad, but I was worried like, oh, do you know? Will it not work out? Will this be like a miss? And I don't think it was a miss. I think they were both pretty fun.
Yeah, Sparkz, you look like you had something to say.
I think Mariner was just as good as they needed to be. I think anything more runs the risk of ruining the live action translation. Mm-hmm. You can't really have both of them move the way they move in the show. Mm-hmm. It was fine for Jack Quaid to do it because he's in more of the episode, thus has more opportunity to do it. But if you had Mariner also being exaggerated in their movements, it becomes a little untenable. Also, she is like, again, I haven't seen it, but like she appears to be a much more animated character as well, moving around a lot, being a lot more eccentric as well. So like, yeah. Well, I guess if she was doing that the entire episode, that would be like, she's kind of. Yeah. And that's, and they can't move. They can't both. Even Jack Quaid doesn't move the same way he moves in the animated show. I'm also going off a single episode, but I know how animation is, and I got the idea of how they move as characters just from the pilot. And like, yeah, she'll do a lot of like grabbing him, pulling him in, and like fist pumps and things like that. That's very Mariner's like, and I feel like
not only was there not a situation where it called for her to have that same kind of energy, because she's more like the guest of the guest on the show and on the ship. So there's not really a take charge moment for her. But also, I think if you have both of them pulling those bigger, broader movements, it's going to kind of be like, oh, so like everybody at this point in live action moves like that.
Mhm.
And like you run into disrupting the mediums. I think the translation was just what it needed to be.
Sure, and I don't mean to say my criticisms of Mariner specifically are to discount anything that you said, Spark. I quite agree with what you're saying. I of the two, I just felt one felt like they were putting in more of that kind of animation performance, because there's a kind of a running joke in the episode that it's not necessarily Starfleet of the 24th century is weird. It's just that these guys are weird. And I think that's really fun to play with the idea that, the crew of the Cerritos, which is where the Lower Decks ship show is set, is just weird. And I really appreciate that, especially when it comes to the line where Mariner, there's a shit ton of references to other Star Trek shows like there are in Lower Decks in this episode, which is wild. So I'm not going to go through any of them, but there's one specifically that I'll highlight to make my point, which is when Mariner first shows up and she says, I thought you were launched to the 21st century and living. It was basically a reference to an episode I think called Past Lives from Deep Space Nine. And number one says to Spock, their references are oddly, if you notice, their references are oddly specific. And I think that's just really funny, just to kind of point that out, that like, yeah, they're just weird. They're just weird people living in Star Trek.
Yeah. I do wish there was a little Lower Deck stuff, like maybe like a character we've never met that could have been like, I'm not saying any cameos or anything, but like something to be like, hey, what's going on with your Lower Decks crew? And it's literally one scene of characters we've never met before, and we never see them again. Like that could have been like a little fun thing. But like
that would have been really funny. Yeah.
Because like I don't know those people. Again, this is focusing on the heroes of the ship, not the Lower Decks crew. But like that would have been fun. Like, so what's your losers up to? And like that would have been fun to see one scene of what are those losers up to.
There is a joke in I think season 2 of Lower Decks that that they go through like, oh, I wonder what other Lower Decks are like, and we see other species do Lower Decks, and we get to the Borg Lower Decks, and it's just 4 Borg sitting in an alcove, and it's really funny.
That sounds pretty good.
Something like that would have been really funny to see in this.
Again, like not I don't have any negatives of the things that weren't in the show, just things that I think would have been really, really fun. If you're going to do, again, I agree. I don't need them to be like the exact characters, but like, if you're going to do like a musical episode, like body swapping episodes, you can do one that's a little more slapsticky funny. But this one still was really, really funny. Like, anytime I just really like, I will eventually watch Lower Decks, but there's just a million shows to watch. It's impossible. But like I really like those 2 characters. Like I think they're really fun, they're really great. And the fact that it is those characters who are the voice actors is really compelling. And it just makes the universe feel kind of like a little more real despite it being animated. But when she's like, oh, I didn't expect Spock to be so hot. Those ears, ooh, that haircut. And I'm like, this is good. This is working. Yeah. I really like it.
I'll kind of, to your point, say that it was a good gag, and something about the way it was executed visually, and I hate to hang this on potentially on Riker, but the Spock smile gag,
yes,
it doesn't land as hard as it should.
Yes,
and it's something about the way it's filmed.
Yeah,
it's good. It's not bad. Jack Quaid's kind of carrying the bulk of it.
Mm-hmm.
It needed like a dramatic zoom or something.
Sure.
But the joke of it doesn't punch the way visually I want it to.
Yeah.
No, I agree with that. I actually 100% agree with that. There's very few in this episode. There's very few things in this episode that don't necessarily work for me, and one of them is the Spock showing. It's played off like Spock is experimenting with emotions because he is dating Christine, but there's something weirdly jarring about it happening in this episode. That because it is new and everyone's kind of commenting on the fact that it's new, and the way it's filmed to kind of be less, especially when we see like him smile and it's filmed because there was one moment specifically though that I want to shout out real quickly, Sparks. Just I want to finish my point here, which is just that I do appreciate his sadistic humor towards the end of the episode, and I'll talk more about that a little later. So because I want you to go.
To your point, I think the problem is that there wasn't an episode that didn't need to be about Spock, but featured Spock playing with these emotions.
Yes,
since the episode ending where they got together. Like, we've seen him be emotional in that episode, but that was before he got his volcanism back. So we haven't seen him doing this. We didn't even know he was doing it, to be honest with you. Like, we saw a single scene and nobody talked about Spock in the previous episode being like this. So then we get here and it's like, oh yeah, he's like trying out emotions. And I'm like, oh, this is a weird time to have introduced that concept. I feel like that should have come up before and then in this episode be a thing that's happening.
This was still early enough in the episode where when Spock just started like just spontaneous laughing, I was like, is he like infecting this universe with the animated universe and things are about to get silly? And I was like, again, that's where I thought it was going, because he just starts randomly laughing. I'm like, is he becoming the Joker over here? Like, what's going on? And it's like, oh no, I'm messing with my emotions. And I'm like, oh, when did this happen? I'm like, we could have like used this a little bit earlier. I do agree with that.
Yeah, I think that there needed to be something, and not to spoil the next couple of episodes, but this is the only time that it also shows up in the future.
Boo.
So like it's just a weird plot line to kind of introduce in this episode and then not really have it not show up prior to this. It's very jarring. It's just
half-baked.
Yeah, it's just weird to have it here.
I even would have accepted it if this had been taken place before the previous episode, so that you can at least ride the line of like, well, Spock's still kind of like rebalancing
Oh yeah,
himself
with
or whatever
with the chapel stuff.
Yeah. And I would have bought that, but like, we see him pretty well mannered in the previous episode and with Chapel.
This just feels like one of those things where I think if they had a longer run time, this would have had an arc. But like, oh no, we need to cut something from this episode. Sorry, Spock. It's gotta
also, as other Star Trek fans have pointed out, like on Twitter, I saw like they're like, oh yeah, because Spock never smiled before.
Yeah,
like clearly not true. It's a good gag. Like, he can be. I think they just need to go harder on the like him behaving otter. But I don't know if it means anything. It kind of felt like a contrived way to get us to the Spock and Chapel point of it all scene for Boimler in the elevator.
Sure. Yeah, I get that. I want to backpedal a little bit on this episode and just kind of highlight that I do really appreciate. I kind of knew they were going to do this anyway. I think they mentioned it when they were talking about this episode, but the animated opening, not necessarily the animated like intro opening, which I think is very clever and very fun. There's a great Lower Decks Easter egg with the warp nacelle slug that they didn't need to do, and I thought that was cute. But
we were both like, what the?
Yeah, and Lower Decks, and the opening for Lower Decks, the warp nacelle slug is just on the Cerritos in one sequence, and they kept bringing that back for the Enterprise, and I was like, that's cute. I appreciate that level of detail.
Yeah.
But the opening just being an episode of Lower Decks, I thought was really cool, and we see our entire crew, our entire Lower Decks crew with Rutherford and Tendi, and Tendi sets up a plot line for this episode, which I thought was really interesting, with the Orions being Orion scientists. And I like the kind of like through line of like Boimler telling like Pike and everyone like, actually it's kind of offensive in my time to say that Orions are all pirates.
Which is cool because like you get you almost, I don't think you really ever get this in Star Trek where like in the moment of them believing they are fully progressive, being told, down the road, not so progressive. You're always improving and this is something you're going to need to improve on. And I think that's really cool, and like tying it into one of their crewmates and everything I thought was very fun. I don't know what I can't even tell you. I don't know what I thought in hindsight the episode would be. I guess I thought that Boimler and Mariner would show up just through the portal, absent any kind of
plot relevance.
Any kind of prelude by their world. Not their world, but their time.
It would have been a random.
They would have come through, and you'd be like, if you're in the know, who they like, and you just follow it, but entirely from the stranger.
It's like in media res.
And I didn't think there would be like tangible stuff on their time period.
It is a true crossover. Yeah,
and like I don't. I think it's cool. I think it's cool overall. I kind of go back and forth in my head about whether I think it should have been in live action or not.
Well, see, here's the thing. They could have, like, this doesn't feel like the lazy route. Like, the lazy route is you just start and like, whoa, how did we get here? And we look like this?
Right,
like,
absolutely.
They didn't have to animate the beginning or the end. Like, that's like juicy extra stuff in my opinion. So like,
Right.
I feel like they went the extra mile to make like, no, like, let's go as hard as we can, like, with this animated crossover. Because then that's like a silly, like, you know, Rick and Morty-esque Star Trek show. And it's like, it is crossing over with the big premiere, this is Star Trek show. And like, that's really cool. That is really, really cool.
Yeah, that's kind of one of those things that I was concerned about going into this episode for people who have come to Strange New Worlds, much like Sparkz has, not knowing anything about Star Trek prior, having kind of ancillary knowledge and really just this is your first Star Trek show, and having a show crossover with Lower Decks, which is a very reference heavy Star Trek show and a much different show. I was really interested to see how they would do something like that. And not only that, but how would it be received by people who don't watch Lower Decks, specifically the animated opening and the ending where we see the Strange New Worlds cast in the Lower Decks animation. I'm just so, I'm not the person to ask about where this opinion would go. Sparkz would be like, I guess to end this point, should I ask the question of like, Sparkz, is it too much for someone to come into a Star Trek show, see this? Is it off-putting is the word I'm looking for? Is it off-putting?
That's I think if I were a person who was really absent, unaware of other things, and like didn't even really like kind of knew Lower Decks was there, but didn't know this crossover was coming, didn't really know the context of what that meant or anything, and all I do is watch Strange New Worlds, I do think kind of the animated opening would throw me a bit. I don't know. I don't think I'd bounce off of it, me personally, but I could totally understand people that did.
Sure.
And it's one of those things where I think having it animated actually is really cool. And makes a lot of sense because why realistically, if the show always looks like that, why would you change the look of the show that people are watching? Because it's in universe at that time. But when I think about like, again, someone who's not really engaging with Lower Decks or nor are they very aware of what it is, the idea that they are supposed to be from the same time period, but we treat the thing as though it almost feels like a separate world because of how it is, because it's animated, but it is just their future. And so it's like, in theory, when it's on the Strange New World show, wouldn't that be in live action?
Yeah.
And like that is, it's an interesting call to have made. And I don't think they made the wrong one. I think there are far more people who are watching the show who are at least passively aware, if not entirely aware, of what Lower Decks is and engage with it, especially at this moment in time.
Yes.
So I think that they're favoring the audience that's there for the show in the majority.
Yes.
It's just a really interesting choice. I don't think most studios would have let a show make.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I think, like
true.
you said,
And that's, again, me not saying I don't like it or it's bad.
I think if this were a season one, it'd be a different story. But this is season 2, and with Lower Decks, which is on its 4th, 5th season at this point, right? So, like, if you're watching Strange New Worlds, you're not watching that on TV. You're watching that on the Paramount website that broadcasts Lower Decks to you immediately after the show's over. So you have some tangential awareness, no matter what. I feel like if you're watching Strange New Worlds, no matter what. So, like, I don't think there's anyone going into it completely blind, like it would be in the 60s or 70s.
I guess my only pushback is that there are still like some fans that they Blu-ray wait, just like people who trade wait and get the Paramount.
I hope they're not online whatsoever
because they've been getting the Star Trek Blu-rays that way because Paramount's been good about it.
Well,
like,
but there is also a lot of people who don't watch Strange New Worlds. It's not Strange New Worlds. Sorry, Lower Decks. There's a large section of the fandom who are not interested in Lower Decks because of its humor style, because of its animation style.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's all the more reason why it should be the animated opening.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
is because it
shows respect to it.
Right. It doesn't like there's a specific word I want here and I can't quite find it, but it doesn't debase it. It doesn't treat it like it's
a lesser art form,
by translating it to live action. It's like, hey, if you're in on Star Trek you're probably just in, and like you can watch the thing and know like this is what it looks like for this time period with the show that we're telling. So that's why it still looks that way here. But don't worry, when we bring those characters over, we're going to bring them into live action because that's what you're used to when you're watching this time period. It's not a different world thing, but a different time period thing, and who we're focusing on. And I think, again, I think the majority of people can just get on board with that. Yeah. And I do think it's an encouraging move for the people who are maybe put off of Lower Decks to want to go watch Lower Decks, which is smart. And I don't think, I think they're catering to the right side. Yeah. It's just an interesting choice. When you just think about it, like, what do you do? I think most other places would have gone live action and like Ryan said, the lazier way of just kind of having them, if not immediately portaling in, only seeing the two of them maybe talking to one of the other crew members off screen.
Yeah, they'd have to do that entire crew then in live action too, and they're not doing that.
You could do Tandy because we see the other Orions. You could do Tandy as well.
You could do Tandy, sure.
Yeah, and like you could just do that, and then them be taken over into the Strange New World timeline, so you'd see both in live action. There it is. That'd just be done. End of day. But I think this is the more interesting choice.
I want to know a funny little factoid. Tawny Newsome and Jack Quaid are both significantly taller than Mariner and Boimler. So when you see Ransom, who's the first officer of the Cerritos at the end of the episode, he is taller than both of them, which makes him roughly 8 feet tall.
That's funny.
I just thought that's really funny.
For just one episode, don't think. And then they're
right, like, that man is huge.
Yeah, that man is a giant.
I think it's the right choice because like it like you said, it treats the art form as legitimate and respectful, which is what it should do. It's like, it doesn't invalidate. There it is. It doesn't invalidate the animation by removing it. It says, no, this is valid, true to canon Star Trek, just as much as like anytime you're watching it, that's what it looks like. For this show and this time, that's what the show looks like. So that's what it looks like before they get over here.
And then the cherry on the cake is the end of the episode where we see our Humies in animated form. And I'm like, they did not have to do this.
I love the explanation is it's the Orion liquor that's making them hallucinate.
It's the liquor that's making them see it that way. And it, like, I thought that was really manga. Just what is this? No, I thought that was really cute, and it's like a really valid way of being like, you know, this show could look like that too.
Yeah,
it's just a perspective thing, and I think it's it's the more fun way to go about it.
Also, if people don't like, let's say they don't like Lower Decks, they watch a 5-minute opening. That's no big deal.
So this is a really unprecedented thing in Star Trek, right, Brandon? Like, this has never really happened before.
Not one medium going to another. There's been plenty of live action go to animation with Prodigy, but never the other way around.
Right. Well, I don't just mean crossover, but like a Star Trek show that is cemented, like an actual full Star Trek show that has its own cast and everything, and their characters traveling back in time to another show.
Oh no! So that is that's happened before. With Trials and Tribulations specifically is probably the closest comparison, which is the Deep Space Nine crew going back to the episode Trouble with Tribbles. So they edit the Deep Space Nine crew into an episode from the 60s. It's a really good episode.
Cool. That's pretty cool.
But it's never happened where it's been two concurrent shows crossing over.
Right, and that's just like them edited into old footage.
That's like Power into the Fist style.
That's cool and fun and impressive. But what I mean is like interacting casts.
This is a true crossover.
Like and across time. So like my point being like having characters directly engaging with each other about characters you're connected to on both sides and can be connected to on both sides. Talking about time and where they're at in Starfleet and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Those old scientists, TOS, that's cute. I think that's cute.
That's a joke from Lower Decks. Ransom coins that term in a previous season, and is kind of caught on to call the TOS era those old scientists, not the original series. Ransom also makes a thing in this episode at the end of the episode when we see him say that Numero Una is the hottest first officer in the fleet. That is because That actor is married to Rebecca Romaine in real life, and that was just him being hot for his wife.
Jesse, what's his name?
That's a good question. It left my mind immediately.
Oh no! Oh, he voiced Superman. Jerry O'Connell.
Jerry O'Connell. Yes,
It's always in there.
He is in real life married to Rebecca Romaine.
That's very cute.
Sure, that's really cool.
That's cute.
I'll tell you, one of my favorite things about it is like, I guess we've seen like an amount of a time travel-esque thing occur on the scale before, which sort of is Spock and Eric Bana going back in time to original series era. Thank you. Going back in time to their original series counterparts and like having these pings of like the people they become, and like especially Kirk, and like everybody's talking about Kirk. It's just nice to have something where they go back and they're talking about everybody but Kirk. Which is cool. And obviously, like there's no good reason. Like they know the moment they see Captain Pike, they're like they're not there yet. But it's still refreshing.
Yeah.
One of the things I do really like about this episode, the thing that I like about this episode is that it is a Strange New Worlds episode still. Boimler and Mariner are there to progress the plot lines of characters that are in Strange New Worlds. Specifically, Pike being kind of taken aback to be like, he has a fan. He knows that his future is terrible. He's known that since Discovery Season 2. So he knows that he's destined for this chair, which is something they allude to in this episode that he knows. And he even he even says himself, it just seemed nice that just kind of felt like my future wasn't so bad, that this person really liked me. And it's nice that Boimler idolized Pike. And then what I think is one of the most effective emotional beats in this entire show is when Boimler and Mariner says that Ad Astra per Aspera was on the recruitment poster for Starfleet.
I wasn't going to go there yet, but yeah, we can.
Hell yeah.
I mean, it's the most important part of the episode.
Yes.
I would argue, because it's the thing that's like, what we were saying is, when we were at the beginning of the season and talking about the stuff with Una, is like, we really want this to matter. We want to know that this matters. And what better way than to give us something that's in the far future that says, don't worry, while we might tackle this thing in small steps and it takes a while for it to matter about her being in Starfleet, in the future, they acknowledge it.
Yeah.
So really nice.
They listen to the podcast.
Yeah, really nice full circle thing about that. And like, again, to credit, because we've talked about like Rebecca Romaine just kind of showing up a bit more this season, giving more opportunities to perform.
Yeah.
Her reaction to hearing that is really great.
Yeah. 100%. I legit cry every single time she says they put it on the poster. Like, truthfully, like it brings me to tears.
It's beautiful.
I was floored by it. I didn't expect to get that kind of emotional gut punch in this episode.
It's a good show.
An episode where Jack Quaid won't stop screaming.
There's a great there's a lot of great, interactions with the animated crew and the new crew in different ways, or the Strange New Worlds crew. But I love the bar scene where like, let's just take a break. Let's have a drink. Take 5.
Yeah, I do. I appreciate that Mariner. Kind of, well, we know from Lower Decks that Mariner is actually a very good officer. She just likes to slack off, and so she like even says it in this episode where she's like, where Uhura's like, Starfleet regulations. Like, yeah, there's a ton of regulations that you let you slack off. So yes, I know them all. Let's go. I think that's very fun. I really like that Mariner is starstruck about Uhura, and seeing her kind of teach Uhura to relax, I think is very meaningful. Like, she doesn't have this moment where she's like so starstruck, and she sees that when she's disappointed that her hero isn't who she knows. She knows that this is a very developmental moment for her hero, and she kind of helps her along that way.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I think that's very nice and very sweet.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but they also have a moment where they like at least recognize Ortegas. Someone does, right?
Yes, Jack Quaid, Boimler says, Lieutenant Ortegas, you're a war hero.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
Yes.
It's what I really like about that is that it like broadens your idea of who's important in Star Trek, because outside of the show, no one had ever heard of Ortegas before. Right. Right. Okay. Just have to double check because I don't always know if I'm talking out of my butt on that one.
Because
I was pretty sure
half the crew is the TOS crew.
But I was pretty sure Ortegas was created for the show. So to have that character reference as like, oh, you're also someone people like history remembers and thinks about, really bronze the idea that it's like, it's beyond Kirk's main crew and that kind of thing who history remembers, and takes it all the way to a character that was made for the show, and that there are still people you can learn about in Star Trek that are not those central figures that are like people still talk about them, people still revere them.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Kirk was it's interesting. Strange New Worlds is really smart for remembering that there's roughly 15 years between the launch of the Enterprise and when Kirk takes command of it. So that's really it's naive to think that in that time the only significant officers on the Enterprise were Kirk's. So to kind of remember, to kind of like bring that highlighting that moment with Ortega's really kind of solidifies exactly what you're saying, Sparkz. Just that these characters are just as important. Ortega's fought in the Klingon War, so like of course she'd be remembered as a war hero.
And to be honest with you, this episode also made me change my mind about La'an's fate. Yeah. Because now I feel like, anything can really happen. Sure. There's it's a little weird that La'an doesn't come up if La'an is around during the con event stuff. But like outside of that, I now buy a little more that like there's room to still talk about La'an in some other capacity, or what did La'an do, or put some respect on her name. In some other part or some other point in Star Trek, whether that's Lower Decks or somewhere else. And so I kind of backpedal off my confidence that she'll be killed by the end. I'm not saying it's not going to happen, but like I'm not as 100% like, oh yeah, that's her fate. She did. I think there is room to like give a moment to tell a story. I just think it has to happen then. Like something Star Trek somewhere down the line post Strange New World still has to, if La'an makes out of the show, has to acknowledge like, what La'an get up to? know?
There's a few, I want to just kind of mention Anson Mount. Anson Mount this season pulled back a lot this season because he had a kid between season 1 and 2, and he took some time away from the show, which is why he's primarily not in the first episode. And I really appreciate. I just want to just shout him out because like I think he's really funny in this because he's just so sick of Boimler. By the end of it, he's just ready to like. He's like babysitting. He's like dad babysitting these two kids that are running around. He's got one of my favorite jokes, and these kind of jokes always like kill me. So like I'm a pretty easy mark, but it's just when he turns around after they call the Orions, and he's just like options, and Boimler raises his hand. And he's just not you. Yep.
Yeah.
I just thought that was really funny.
Him and Quaid play off each other really well. And I think that's really fun. To your point of what you're saying about Mount not being as present because of having, which totally makes sense. It's a real shame that I'm sure he's going to be more center at some episode that's coming up, but it's a real shame that his episode is the one that he stole from Ortegas and not as good a story. He's been great everywhere else.
Let's see. I really appreciate. No, I don't want to talk about that one. I'll talk about.
I got one.
Yeah.
Because we brought up La'an, but like her little scene with Boimler's cute. She's like, "Hey, I know you're here, but like, not that I have experience or anything. Don't like great attachments or do anything crazy. Because like, again, no experience. So I didn't do anything crazy. Fall in love with an alternate person or anything." And I was like, "Oh, La'an, you're so cute. I love it."
I like the immediate next line is like, "I won't say anything. Worf's on her." Oh shit.
Worf's on her. Yeah, there's a Q reference. Like, they don't know him yet. Like,
yeah, that's really holy Q.
Yeah, that's like,
and just reminding him that you mess things up here, and your world is gone. Like when you're not gonna get to go home.
Future's gone.
Yeah.
There was a lot of improv in this episode from Jack Quaid and Tawny Newsome to kind of bring some of the Lower Decks-esque mannerisms to the thing. One moment where he Rikers the saddle, where he does the Lego thing, that was completely improv on the day. And having William Riker there and doing the Riker bit apparently was really funny. But there is a specific thing that I will shout out because it's my favorite thing, and this is a reference that you guys are not going to get. But there is a Section 31 reference in Lower Decks where Boimler is doing a specific walk where he's kind of like shimmying as he's walking. And that's called according to Boimler, that's the Section 31 walk. All members of Section 31 use that walk. And Section 31 is a shady government organization that are racist. But but Boimler does that in this episode, and that was just apparently him just being like, I'm going to do the Section 31 walk now. And I just thought that's really great.
Not knowing that information, it's his most standout moment of like, yeah, you came from an animated show.
Yeah. I thought he was just like being a weird guy. I'm like, yeah, he's a weird guy.
Yeah, he's doing
I thought that was just his translation of physically being uncomfortable because it's when he's running away from Una.
Yeah. Apparently, like, it was again watching the Ready Room of this episode was really fun because it was him just being like, yeah, a lot of the stuff I just did on the day just to kind of bring in little references as you could. Yeah. I like that when that Boimler and Mariner kind of get paired up with other characters like Spock and Uhura, and I really like the Spock and Boimler science bros thing happening where he's just like, it's supposed to explode, and Spock's just like calmly like, nope, we need to take cover and just leave.
No, we need to leave. Yeah.
I thought that was really funny. And then there's the kind of the crux of the episode kind of comes to a head when they realize that this thing needs a specific power source, and it's something that I think it's deuterium. No, it's deuterium is what powers a starship. I forgot the name of it now. It's something that the old NX class starships from way back in the days of Archer's Enterprise used in their ships, and so
which they name drop him specifically.
Yeah, they name drop him specifically because it was sort of something I really like. Kind of,
I did the Leo meme.
Yeah, Pike, Ortegas, and Uhura have a very Lower Decks moment where they're kind of reminiscing about the Enterprise that precedes them, talking about the NX Enterprise. It's like, Pike's like, I get it. Like, what would I do if I just found myself on Archer's Enterprise? And that kind of gives Boimler the light bulb moment. And I wasn't going to bring this up yet because I kind of forgot about it, but I will mention that Ortegas and Uhura mentions Hoshi Sato, which is the inventor of the Universal Translator, and Ortegas mentions Travis Mayweather. And I'll be honest with you guys, I lost some respect for Ortegas in that moment because Travis Mayweather is the worst character in all of Star Trek history.
Oh no.
He is in fact the pilot of the NX-01, and it is not the actor's fault. It's technically not even the character's fault that the writers just didn't ever do anything interesting with that character. For 4 seasons, he is just the worst, most waste of space character.
This is the retcon. We're like, actually, no, he was awesome. Don't think about it.
Well, future pilots are impressed by him, Brandon.
Yeah,
he didn't break the ship.
That, you know what? That is true. He didn't break the ship.
There you go.
Oh, and Ortegas has the old one with the grapplers, and Lala's like, I like grapplers.
I'm sorry he wasn't funny or interesting enough for you, Brandon, but he did his job.
He did his best.
He landed the ship.
Never landed a ship, honestly. Well, no, he landed a few shuttles, I guess. So you're right, Ryan.
I really like when Boimler messes up and says, well, in the future, his birthday is a holiday, and everyone's like, what? And he's like,
gotta stop people in the future. Oh, yeah, they have a cute birthday party.
Yeah, I like that.
I think Spock's smile getting more disturbing works better in the scene where Mariner is with Boimler to react to it. It still doesn't get to the point I want it to. Sure. But it's definitely better there than it is in the first bit.
Yeah, because she's like, oh, Spock smiles now? I was like, yeah, don't worry about it.
He smiles now? He smiles now.
I'm just glad we to the point of what you were saying, I'm just glad we got some Ortegas with Uhura and Mariner.
Yeah.
I'm just glad that, like, I feel like they knew they kind of did her dirty with that episode, and so like they still like try and get her in some scenes. Like, no, she should still be here. She's important.
Oh yeah, Uhura called her a genius. She's like, yes, I am a genius. Why am I a genius?
Yeah,
Like, she's great. She's great.
There's so many references in this episode to God, everything. But Uhura realizes that the teleporter, that the portal machine is ancient Nausicaan, which is a crazy reference to a Star Trek: The Next Generation. The characters that almost killed Picard were Nausicaan.
Ooh, I was thinking of Nausicaa in the Valley of the Wind.
I was too.
Yeah.
I get that. It's like when I say Cardassians, you guys think I'm saying Kardashians.
No, I actually know what Cardassians are.
Sparkz
I get that. I'm the Leo meme.
Anyway, yeah. Let's see if there's anything else I want to.
There's a line between Mariner and Boimler that's like, do you notice how slow and quiet they talk?
Oh, yeah.
Which I thought was a really cute, like, acknowledgement of the differences just between the mediums and a nice way to do it. Like, oh yeah, back in this time, like they talked really slow and quiet.
The Orions have a really great moment when they're on the planet, and it's so. One of my favorite things about this episode is that Boimler kind of accidentally screws an entire colony because he came through this portal. There's a specific grain that's going to this colony, Setlec 2, I think it is.
Yeah.
And it's significant because it's close to Cardassia. Setlec 3 is a major battle in the Cardassian Wars. So Setlec 2.
Chloe need that grain.
I swear to God, I'll gonna make the same joke. I swear to God.
So they need this grain, but they instead make this trade for this portal for this portal, and because of that, the settlers have to be moved, and Pelia doesn't get a lot to do with this episode. Carol Kane only has 2 scenes in this episode, but she actually has one of my favorite lines, which is, "Don't mess up my floor. I have to walk on that." And Spock just goes, "It's illogical for you to think you're the only one."
That's pretty good.
But I do really appreciate that it kind of comes full circle. The whole episode comes full circle when it's revealed that, like, what Tendi said about the Orions being the first people to discover this portal is because of this grain thing that Boimler messed up. And it's because Boimler's interference that now history remembers these people as Orion scientists and not Orion pirates. And I think that's just a really sweet thing to do.
That's why the time cops don't come for him, because this was supposed to happen.
It's true. The TV is not allowed.
Yes, that's exactly why that happens. Although he'll probably get a.
But I honestly, I always love like fun time loops like that, where you go like, oh, this is how it all loops around. Like I think that's really great. And like the Tandy's like, yeah, it's my great grandma. She's on that ship. Like, how did you know that? That's weird. Like that's a fun closed circle loop.
Yeah, I like the line. I always think, to people who don't watch Lower Decks, the line like, "Oh yeah, our friend Tendi is an Orion. She also goes by murder of the winter solstice or whatever, like witch of the winter solstice or whatever." And I'm just like, man, that must be wild for people who never watched that show.
People like a nickname.
It was fine.
I love a nickname.
Didn't throw me.
People call me Dragonhawk.
Dragonhawk.
I do think it's helped by like having the context. Like another reason I think it's smart to have the animated opening is like, for anyone a step too far out, like you see her at the beginning, you connect the Orions, you connect the whole, like when they're talking about it, it's not that weird or wild. It doesn't feel like out of the blue information. Whereas again, had we not seen them, and then we're just like tossed into this, and they just offhandedly mention like, oh yeah, our friend Tendi, she's an Orion, she goes by the blah blah blah. I'd be like, well, that's just like gobbledygook information, I guess.
Yeah.
There's a line towards the end of the episode that so when Mariner and Boimler are leaving, and you hear Rutherford and Tendi from the other side. It's like, do you guys need us to come over there? And Pike's like, no, just no. Please leave.
We've spent enough of the budget.
Pike's just deep exasperation when Mariner comes through the portal and there's just 2 of them.
And the babysitter, those parents are late picking up those kids. That babysitter is done.
Enterprise, beam up 5.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah.
All right. All right. I'll just be spouting off more references that I liked, and I don't want to get turn this into an episode of Lower Decks, as it were.
I really like the way that Pike brings around like this was discovered by Orion scientists as part of the deal, and like this thing of respect. I like it. It's just nice.
Yeah.
I also really like when Pike talks about his dad.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I did really like that. I liked the idea that Boimler's kind of not sure why nobody knows Pike's birthday, and kind of gets on to that it's because of his future, the being in the beep beep chair. And when he's and when confronted by it, Pike's like, no, that's not it. It's because of my dad, and it's because I had a bad relationship with my dad, and blah blah blah. I found that really sweet. Like, again, what I thought was just going to be like a one-off silly crossover episode of inconsequential nature turned out to have some really interesting character moments for all of our characters. Sets Chapel and Spock off in an interesting place, because Chapel we didn't really talk about, but Chapel kind of gets wise to the fact that she's not a lasting impact on Spock's life because of what Boimler accidentally says.
Which she also admits she kind of assumed and expected.
Yeah.
But yeah. She knows the writing's on the wall, even if Spock doesn't.
Yeah. I quite like this episode. Obviously, we are recording these episodes later, as much of the season has aired at this point. And if a episode hadn't come out, this would have been my favorite of the season.
Sure. Yeah. You audience have no context because you're in post-strike land, and I hope it's wonderful over there. I hope everybody's getting paid what they want, and climate change has ended, and like the world is a better place.
Man, are you really shooting for the moon? Climate change has ended.
Yeah, why not go for everything?
Yeah, why not? All right.
But to your point, I think it's very easy to have something like this where it's like, what's the purpose of doing this? For fun. Yeah. And like that can be enough, but I do think it's all the better that I feel there's really one specific point to like why do this besides the fun, and it's the Una thing. To have the opportunity to give a full circle of like we will piecemeal you more story with Una through this show, but the real like impact of it, the thing that's going to last down the line, we're going to tell you right now. Honestly, that's real.
I think Una's is the most like the biggest impact, but I think that's true of every character, because they're fans of all these characters. And we talk about Ortegas being a war hero and how good Spock is, and how Uhura is remembered for being like this great communication person. And like, these are all people who kind of get the limelight of like, they might be going through shit now, but they're all remembered as heroes in some way. And I'm like, oh yeah, that is really cool. That like,
but I think to the point I was saying, like, I just think that's the one where it's like, it's beyond just like, hey, you're remembered really well, kind of thing. It's saying like this tells Una in a time that she will never live to see. You are a part of Starfleet in such a way where they put you on a poster where we started the season with her
on trial
and almost ejected from Starfleet for who she is. And like having the ability to do a full, not just full circle, but a full projection for that character of like, your presence matters far beyond what you think. I think that's even more important for the story that the season is telling. While all the characters are touched by things, and I think that is there. I think that is a very like, you paid off story elements of other episodes in a way that has, I think, fundamentally altered how that character will go into that character now gets to go into every battle that she has to going forward about her people, knowing it changes.
Yeah. She shouldn't know that truth. Too much power.
But I mean, it's a nice, but it's a nice gift because, like, instead of having hope that it'll change, it'll change.
Yeah.
That this matters in this moment, right now, in this time. It, and what a gift that is for that character after what we put them through earlier in the season. I also think it's a really nice opportunity for pushing Pike further out of the depressed about my impending demise, not demise, but my impending suffering.
I like that you call it the beep beep chair, Brandon. That's really funny.
My impending Davros chair.
Yeah.
Right before I create the Daleks. I think that's really a nice idea of like, you know, he talks about having this hope for his future, but he gets to know that like he has this legacy in Starfleet, and that's something that he can not just like be proud of, but like that he'll strive to live up to until the very moment he can't. And I like things that are pushing him further and further away from where we start in season 1 about being just like super depressed about it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. There's something else I wanted to just kind of highlight, which is there's 2 moments that kind of make fun of the aesthetic of the 23rd century. One is Mariner kind of like, oh, rank on the sleeves. I don't know about that. But another is when they're examining Boimler's comm badge, which cues them into, which allows us to not have a moment where he's trying to pretend that he's from the century. Although he does for a moment like, yes, 5 digits, perfectly normal star date, which I thought was cute. But they're looking at his comm badge, and I like that it's not, oh, look how high tech it is. It's, oh, they don't flip it anymore. Flipping is the best part. I thought that was cute.
Classic.
All right. Anything else?
Good episode of Star Trek.
I was very impressed with this episode. I'm really happy that it turned out to be as good as it did. I think Sparkz nailed it on the head with his point about Una, about that, and I think that it's just very cool that something that could have just been quick little nothing, fun little side fluff piece is a very important episode of Star Trek Strange New Worlds. I think this does the crossover idea very well. How I think whenever people do crossovers, it's always got to be, how does this positively impact the story we're telling? And I think it does it very well.
Yeah.
I think just one other thing that a pitfall they easily could have fallen into is feeling like this event has to change things for like create shifts for both sides.
Yeah.
And it didn't.
Yes.
Boimler can still just be Boimler, and Mariner can still just be Mariner and have met these people. And like they didn't need to be emotionally focused on for a change, because this is a Strange New Worlds episode. And to be honest with you, I was just thinking about like other crossovers in television, that it always bothers me when someone is crossing over to another show and they feel like they have to equally progress both characters. I'm like, no, this can just be about the characters who are on this show being directly affected by this crossover, and the other ones can kind of just be present and the experience have happened, but they don't need to be fundamentally changed by the experience.
Yeah.
Yes, I 100% agree with that. I was thinking about.
I think.
Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I think if they tried to do that, it would have muddied the episode. It would have been sloppier.
Yeah, I keep thinking about episodes where Buffy and Angel would cross over.
I'm going to the same thing. I'm going to the same place. Yes.
Feels very similar. Of like, you know, you're absolutely right. Like these kind of this crossover specifically. This is an episode of Strange New Worlds, not an episode of Lower Decks. Yes, these characters are crossing over, but this should be impacting the Strange New Worlds character in a meaningful way, not necessarily impacting the Lower Decks characters in a meaningful way.
I'm pretty sure, and I couldn't tell you the events or specific episode or any of that of what it is, but I'm pretty confident there's a point where Angel is already a show that's happening, and Angel leaves and goes on Buffy, and like a really important emotional thing happens to him. He goes back to Angel, and like everybody's just like, man, what happened to him there? But like he won't talk about it, and I don't think he does for like 15 episodes.
It was
and like
really
won't
weird.
Acknowledge it. And like you had to watch that episode of Buffy to know what was going on with Angel for like half of the season.
I just found it really weird that David Boreanaz, he would just like during those episodes, he'd look at the camera and go, watch Buffy episode 7. Anyway.
Yeah, but like it's weird. It would have been, I think that would have diminished the impact of what this is. And I'm glad that like what it does is favor the show that it's on, favorite the cast that it's on, and be like, we're having a fun thing. They are the guests. Here are the hosts. The hosts are the ones who are being altered by this event.
This is the best possible outcome of this type of crossover, specifically with a wild animated show.
Yes.
Yeah. And they still get to have fun with the animated format, with the bumpers being animated Lower Decks episodes, the intro being an animated version of this Strange New Worlds intro, and the Strange New Worlds cast being animated for a bit. Like you have your cake and eat it too.
Yum, yum, yum.
Yeah.
All right. That'll do it.
That will do it.
Cool.
Can't wait until we get together next time to talk about the 8th episode. Kirk, why are you on my ship?
No, Kirk's not on that episode.
Oh, my bad.
That's 9. Yeah, this one,
the next musical episode he's on?
Yes.
Yeah, because he's a singer.
So this one will be the next episode we talk about will be Under the Cloak of War. Which, let me tell you guys, prepare for some whiplash.
Under the cloak. Is it like really serious?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
It's kind of wild. I don't mind saying this, but like it's kind of strange going forward. From here, we had this really fun comedy, really dark war story, musical, and what looks like the final episode has not aired at the time of this recording. What looks like another really dark episode. So it's
hell yeah,
interesting how they've done this.
Well, I don't know what to tell you, Brandon. Strange is in the name.
You're right. You're so right. And on that note, let's say goodbye. This was Star Trek Strange New Worlds Fake Nerds Watch. This for season 2, episode 7. Those Old Scientists. Thank you guys so much for joining. At the time of this recording, many shows are on hiatus for the strike, and if you're watching this, clearly that is no longer the case. But please check out our website at fakenerpodcast.com to find all the links to every single show that we do and what was impacted by the strike, what is impacted, where things are coming, where you can find episodes and things like that on that website. And if we want to support us, make sure to check us out on our TeePublic and our Patreon, which are all linked below. Support the strike, which actually...
It's over.
I hope it's over, but I hope you supported it.
We're like, hey, go check out the links for the strikes.
I hope you supported the strike. We certainly did.
There's a narrow window possibility where the SAG-AFTRA strike ends, which means we go back to releasing stuff, even though because the WGA didn't ask for the same things, and who knows? It's a different world. We're just doing our best.
Yeah,
it's fun for the future.
Yeah, it's not now.
All the links are down below that you can check out. Of course, you can also find our sources at Fake Nerd Podcast on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. FakeNerdGuys@gmail.com. I'm at BT McClure on Instagram and Twitter. You can also find me writing for CBR.com, AtomicGeekdom.com, and KaijuRamenMedia.com. Sparkz, where can people find you?
You can find me eagerly anticipating the musical episode, which is not the next one, but that's okay. At Sparkz Witty on Instagram and Twitter, SPARKZ Witty.
And Ryan?
You can find me living in the future of when these are released, maybe in the year of our Lord 2024, at DJ Tony Snark 616. Maybe it's back to Twitter. Who knows in this crazy world?
Who knows? In the 23rd century, anything is possible. That's how long the strikes have lasted, the 23rd century.
Oh my God.
All right, guys.
Movies ended.
Until the next time you see us, which is whenever, stay fake. No, live long and prosper. I almost did the wrong outro.